There is a lot to discuss about the starter deck, and it is actually the final one I'm discussing. So, if this is the first one you've been tuning into, good news, I've got discussions about all four of them already out on my channel. But what I'm going to discuss about in this video is the deck strategy and the deck as a whole, the version exclusive, my thoughts on them, as well as a buyer's guide at the end there. So if this interests you, you're in the right place, and let's get right into it. So the Trifernal deck, I did mention in my new player starter deck guide video how it did feel like it was leaning more towards an aggro style of play with some more defensive cards, and I was admittedly trying to be more optimistic about it, but this deck especially infuriates me from a strategy standpoint. Okay, infuriates a really strong word. It frustrates me. That's a more accurate way to put it. And that's just because it has some really powerful aggro tools in Necro, Wormite, Kinleo, Volcaries. But then you just throw in, oh, actually, Blader's a Sinago card as well. But then you throw in the defensive tools of Smoltuga, Humbust, and Floracne. And you're just like, okay, oh, and Spinum here. And it's like, oh, so it's not an aggro deck here. And then the question becomes then, what is your strategy here? A control deck? But you really don't have too much control cards, or like they don't really do enough. And that's mainly Floracne and Humbust. And Trifernal is technically a control card, but it's really coupled to two very aggro cards that sometimes you might just not even want to play Trifernal. So this deck really is a bit of a mess here. So I think really the best way to play it is if you have more stall tools, like Smoltuga here, you just stall and grab your aggressive tools to have a payoff to you stalling here. Use Spinum's ability to more easily aggress over stuff. Make sure if you have Humbust really get to use its effect. It's kind of really hard. You just kind of have to be able to transition between the defense and then explosive offense when you grab your pieces here. And that's just kind of how it is with this deck, unfortunately. But to really classify these cards, I did mention the aggro tools here. Necro being a phenomenal attacker, be able to expend extra spirit is great. Blazers being able to attack twice is great. It can technically special send itself into Trifernal, but I think you'd rather just keep the attack twice most of the time, unless you're really worried about your opponent getting out stuff and you want to control their board with Trifernal. Trifernal is a powerful card, but its effect is definitely more of a control card, so you can just kind of control what your opponent can play, and Trifernal can just beat down your opponent. Wormite's aggro, as it's a great way to hit over powerful stuff by giving it -4 attack. Volcaries gets more powerful with spirits. It's a fire Tectoros pretty much, and Tectoros is a earth Volcaries. So, and there's definitely still your Volcanic Force, the Stadium, Divine Rune, and Artifacts help beef it up so you can easily attack over stuff. Kinleo is a powerful Nexus to just destroy an opponent's Elestral, meaning you can throw extra spirits on stuff to aggress your opponent while getting rid of their obstacle. Really powerful there. I mentioned control tools are like Trifernal, but other control tools are Floracne, which pretty much just prevents your opponent's Elestrals from being able to attack their turn or cast unless they have a fire spirit on them. So a great way to kind of slow down your opponent, but if you're playing aggro, why would you need to slow down your opponent? I don't know, but you can definitely stall to then slow down your opponent and then kind of hit over them with your aggro tools at least. Humbust is a very weak Elestral. We'll kind of discuss more about it. It's technically a control tool, but I don't think it and Cinder or both discard cards really provide enough for the deck here. Smoltuga, just be able to stall to grab your fire tools isn't too bad. So that one's not terrible. Veritaqua to hit defense stuff that might block your way also isn't too bad either. Even for an aggro deck, I actually think I quite like this card. If your opponent's trying to stall you, just throw a Veritaqua and hit into it. Not too bad. And Spinum, it's more of a stall card, but at least it sets you up to be able to hit over with your Elestral, so not terrible. Moving on to the runes, Knight of the Gods and Ambrosia will always be good, just recovery and draw 2. And funny enough, this actually has, not funny enough, but notably, this one has 2 here, which is quite nice. I've seen some of the lists, I'm pretty sure have 1. Yeah, I just checked it. This is the only list that has both 2 Nectar and 2 Ambrosia, as Blintera only has 1 Nectar, 2 Ambrosia, and all the other ones have 2 Nectars, 1 Ambrosia. So quite interesting there. Definitely a more solid kind of 2 runes, generic runes here to just try and draw you to more cards to be more aggressive, or I guess draw into your aggressive pieces, and then a bit more recovery because you're probably going to be using a lot of spirits in this deck. Next, Circle the Skies, same thing as always. It can benefit if it's good. Sometimes it just might be a dead card in hand. Hephaestus is quite nice to search out your hammer to grab Nexus targets for Kinleo and buff up some of your Elestrals and provide hammer provides a protection effect against Elestral effects, so that's also quite nice. Like you can't be Kinleo or Boom Bat. Volcanic Force to power up your Elestrals to make them even more aggressive and hit over more stuff. Eruption for Burn is also quite nice in an aggro deck, and this actually probably is the only card that really bridges the gap between everything, as it's great with the stall tools to kind of burn out your opponent, kind of how it was in the Majesty deck, and with the aggro tools because this card just burns your opponent 3 spirits, meaning they're closer to losing, meaning they've got less time to try to wait out your aggro and kind of wait till you burn yourself out. So quite nice there. Earthquake, this is still really good in aggro just because you get not always have to rely on getting an opponent, an Elestral on your board to hit over it, and it just lets you connect more attacks to the Spirit deck. Gorgon's Gaze, again, is interesting because it's really just a stall tool. Doesn't really do much other than stall and prevent your opponent from doing something with an Elestral you target. And then same thing with Tsunami, it just kind of stalls, which actually I don't think is too bad in this deck. It's a cheap way to do it, and you can easily run over stuff or pop stuff with Kinleo's effect, so not too bad there. So that's kind of the deck as a whole. I don't really have too much else to say other than it's just frustrating that it can't just be aggro. It kind of has both tools, and overall the card quality in this is... You got some great aggro tools, as I mentioned in Necroform, my Kinleo Volcaries are probably the most notable ones. And then you just kind of have some of the stall tools which really aren't that great. Fluoracne is nice. Wirtz has definitely seen some success with this card, but overall I don't think it's that great. Humbust, etc. So you've got some decent stuff, but overall I think the card quality, since it's so split down the line, it's just overall all I can really say is just meh overall. And most of these cards come in the main set anyway that you really care about. So overall I shouldn't say the cards necessarily are bad. It's just how they synergize together that also, and honestly, you can just build a better control fire deck or a better aggro fire deck from the main set cards, excluding one. So on that note, let me get into the exclusives to this deck. And they are Humbust and Hephaestus, and actually Gorgon's Gaze. Can't forget about that one. So those 3 here are your version exclusives. Humbust here is a 1-attack, 2-defense fire spirit Elestral that reads, when a player casts a rune, your opponent must send the top 2 cards of the deck to the underworld. So it's a mill card. Your goal with a mill card is just to kind of get rid of cards from your opponent's deck, and ideally deck them out or at least get rid of their important pieces. They're most likely to deck them out, and there just isn't enough deck out right now. Humbust is certainly interesting as you just fire off a ton of runes and can just mill your opponent 2 for each one, as it's not a once per turn. And it also means that either your opponent chooses not to cast runes on their turn until they can attack over it, or they just accept that they're going to mill 2 when they cast a rune. So quite nice there. I just don't think there's enough payoff. Definitely not with an aggro deck here, as like Cinder's the only one that is mill as well, and I just don't think there's enough support to make these 2 really worthwhile. Yet they form a great core, so definitely look out for Humbust, as I think this is a phenomenal mill card as well, and some decks will be able to make a lot of use of it with it. I'm just already thinking, especially with Drops of Leaf, being able, that's 1 rune, and then you can cycle to try to draw into more runes to play, and just kind of mill a ton with Humbust, and you try to get out multiple Humbust. Seems pretty cool to me. So I do think that if a mill style deck interests you in any form, even if not necessarily fire, just mill in general, as Humbust is not does not require, it is a fire Elestral, but it does not require a fire focused deck. Definitely keep an eye out on this card, because I definitely think there's a lot of potential here, even though I don't think its potential is actualized from the first set. Hephaestus is also, like all the other Divine Runes, is exclusive to this set, and it can be, when it's cast, can be enchanted with up to 3 fire, which is quite nice to load up for stuff like Volcaries and Kinleo. And it's got one of the better effects, disenchant 1 to search out an artifact. Quite nice there, just to be able to play the artifact right away for whatever you need it for, buffing stuff up, or just, again, Kinleo Nexus effect. And even outside of just Kinleo Nexus effect, you can honestly run Hephaestus in any deck that wants to search out an artifact, because Hephaestus does not need to search out just Hammer. It can search out anything, which is quite nice. Sprouted does the same thing on a body, but it's also nice to have like a rune option to do it, as you can then enchant something else and really set up a specific Elestral, then go Hephaestus and search out the artifact you want to pair for. So a lot of great utility behind this card as well. And yeah, I personally really like it. And other note I was going to make is you gotta search out an artifact, misenchanted Nexus with whatever card you want as well, or just misenchant the Hephaestus. Really, honestly, it's flexible, both in the fact it's Divine Rune in the same way like Demeter is for Earth, and it also just, its effect in itself is super flexible as well, and deck thinning as well. So all in all, really great card here. And I think is something that every player should look out for, even if you're not playing Fire, just because it has a good generic effect that some decks, even outside of Fire, will want. Gorgon's Gaze is a counter rune that costs any 2 spirits. It's neutral, just a generic card. And it reads, target an Elestral on the field until end of phase. That Elestral's effects is negated, and it cannot receive enchantments, attack, nexus, or ascend. So it pretty much can't do anything. And you're pretty much paying 2 spirits just to stall out, which isn't too bad if you really need to stop your opponent's Elestral from doing something. But most of the time you'd rather just get rid of it, and you've got other ways to do it plenty enough. I think this card is still worth watching out for, as there might be a card that you specifically need Gorgon's Gaze for to stop, and in which case from doing something explosive, in which case you want this card. But currently, I just think all the other counters do a better job. Shield is just the best one by far. Poison Tip definitely has plenty of utility, and the only other thing I could think of is like a Pantera, or Twindra, Hydrate Twindra Pantera type deck. And I just think Pandora's Box is better for that one to counter it as well. So right now, I don't think Gorgon's Gaze has too much use case, but definitely has that potential as just being able to stun an Elestral for a turn, may be relevant, may be the best way to kind of stop it in its tracks. So that's it for the version exclusive cards. Honestly, despite the deck being a bit of a mess, I do think the version exclusives are really good for this set. And as such, for my buyer's guide, I think for a casual player, if you really want to play Fire, definitely pick this one up. I don't think you should pick it if you're trying to learn the game or any strategies. Really only if you want to play Fire, want to play like Blazers, Rush, Trifernal Focus, you like Necruff. That is the only reason to buy this. And as for people wanting to be a bit more above like new player, more even like casual maining Fire, but even like I think casual players want to do this, and especially competitive players, pick up 2 for the Festus. It's going to be a great card for both casual and competitive. And that's probably the biggest reason why to pick up this deck. It's also nice to pick up Gorgon's Gaze, as I think it will become relevant at some point, so that's also a good reason to pick it up as well. And then, of course, if you're interested in Mill Hunt Bust as well, but frankly, just Hephaestus Gorgon's Gaze is great. So just to reiterate, I think for competitive players, pick up 2 of this. For casual players that want to build a ton of fun decks, I still think I'll pick up 2 of this. You can get away with 1 with Hephaestus, but 2 will be better just to get these 2 cards. And for new players, I do not recommend this deck to necessarily try out to learn the game, as it's just a mess, and I think will teach you all the wrong lessons. But if you really want to play like Trifernal or like a Blazer Rush deck, then I can say for new players, pick it up. Though I will also mention that you can pretty much pick up all these cards, especially if you want to do like Blazers Rush from the main set, and it shouldn't be too bad as well. But you just at least get a good basis to it. But yeah, that is my breakdown for the Trifernal deck, and that wraps up all of the starter decks, me discussing them. So if you missed any of them, I will have the playlist linked below and in the card above. And I realized that I forgot to mention that in some of these, so I'll have to add that in. But yes, please go check those out. And also, I plan on doing a full set breakdown in the near future. So once that is out, I'll have a link down in the description below for it. Or you can always just go to my channel, to my playlist, and it should be there. With that being said, though, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment down below what your thoughts are on this deck. And I encourage everyone, as always, to go read the comment section down below, as this is just my opinion. I think there's plenty more useful opinions out there, and reading the comments with people commenting their thoughts, I think will be super useful to everyone. And also, as I've been running all these videos, thank you so much again for getting this new player starter deck guide to 165 views. It's been amazing to see. I'm super happy that this has been a super useful tool for new players so far as we enter Kickstarter, and I hope it continues to be once we get to the official release, as well as all these videos. So if you've been enjoying my content, please subscribe to my channel, turn on the notification bell so you're notified when I upload more Elestrals content, because there's certainly going to be plenty more coming out real soon.